Thanks, and here we go again. Today I want to ramble on about racing and some of the parallels racing has with music. And I'm going to concentrate on this car, the Brabham, the BT29, my favorite race car because it is a magic machine. Okay, when I first got this and elevated from the Lotus 7, again, Dave Vager, one of the senior old time, well, not too much older than me, but he'd been around forever, three-time national champion. He's the guy that came up and rapped me on the helmet while I was on the Lotus 7 and said, Rocket Randy on the pole again, you're ready for something more. Come to my shop and see what I got. So he was brokering the sale of that car. Remember, if you watch the other one, that's the one that I was shocked that my previous wife, Suzanne, may she rest in peace, purchased for me. And the funny thing was, just in case you guys didn't make it to the end of out at the track, everybody's standing around admiring this beautiful car. And somebody says to Suzanne, is it true you bought him this car? And she says, yeah, look at him. He just turned 50. I figured I had two choices. It was either a BT29 or a 19-year-old blonde. Well, this car represents a major step up because it's a real purpose-built race car, and I cannot emphasize enough the difference between a purpose-built race car and a production car that's made to be a race car. No matter how racy it is, it won't even come close. One of the big differences is in the tires and in the rubber compound. And here's how I learned about that. First of all, I practically crashed it the first time out because the same guy, Dave Vager, said, hey, you're braking so early. Brake here. And so I come hauling ass down towards turn 11, which is a hairpin with a concrete wall around it, and put on the brakes. And shit, I didn't have much grip. Luckily, I managed not to hit the wall, but it was fortuitous because of one of the mechanics that worked in a top shop there heard the screeching of tires and looked over just in time to see smoke pouring off all my wheels. And I got it slow enough that I could throw it sideways and not smash into that concrete wall. That turned out to be a guy named Thomas Burden, and he became so instrumental in our little racing endeavors. Anyway, here's the deal with these race tires. They have a solvent in the rubber compound that emulsifies at a certain at a certain temperature. So you have to select the rubber compound based on the weight of the car so that it gets into this operating temperature, which is around 160 degrees, where it makes the surface of the tires really sticky. Like if you sit on them, first you'll burn your ass, but you won't even be able to get back up hardly because it's almost like hot tar. Okay, but to get to that point, you have to go through this kind of scary transition where nothing really is working right. The other thing about these kinds of cars is that nothing really works right until and unless you're at full boil. You can't just drive it around leisurely. Well, I mean, you can, but it doesn't seem right. But man, once you get it really going and you're in the groove, it's an amazing experience. And that's what I want to talk about, that amazing experience, that flow, the groove, the zone. And that relates to what we seek as musicians too, where you forget about everything you know and you just blow, right? You all know that. That's what we seek. And it's to get to this state of consciousness that I think dogs live in, where they're in the moment all of the time. What happens to us as humans after we're born and we go through a year or two, then eventually we start to develop self-consciousness and language. And both of those split us into two different observational beings. Well, I should say one that does and one that bees. Yeah, you know, it's a famous, I took philosophy at Cal Berkeley and I summarize it this way. David Hume said, to be is to do. And Jean-Paul Sartre said, to do is to be, or to be is, but then my guy, Dizzy Gillespie, said, doobie doobie doo, and he got it right. So that's the thing, is that when you're in that zone, whether it's music or whether it's driving a race car, you're looking for that flow where you don't have time to sit there and evaluate what you're doing because you're no longer in the moment when you're doing that. So, yeah, so I struggled with that car because I didn't know that. And this guy helped me. This older guy, Tom Claridge, had been racing since the 60s. And he told me another couple of great things. He said, for one thing, he said, did you ever ski? And I said, yeah, I love to ski. And he said, well, I can tell because you can slide this car. You're really aware of the grip and the limit. You're really fast in the slow parts, but man, you're really slow in the fast parts. And I knew that because I'd get a good distance on him and in the hard sharp turns at Sears Point, and then coming back down the backside, he would just drive right by me. And I go, geez, what? And he said, okay, here's the deal, Sonny. That limit that you can feel with your body, that feels the same at 50 in a tight turn as it does at 150 in a sweeper. And I said, oh, yeah, I never thought of it that way. You're right. The G body English is the same. And then I commented and I said, yeah, but the trouble is at 150, that track gets really narrow and the penalty gets really high. Actually, you don't even get up to 150 at Sears Point. At least I never did. It's too twisty. There's no straightaway to actually do that. But eventually, and he also gave me a bunch of other tips about racing. And I said, I walk the track and try to look at all the things because I remember reading Sterling Moss did that. And he said, yeah, try walking it backwards. I said, backwards? He said, yeah, because the exit of the turn is really the important part. And so start with the exit and then figure out how. At any rate, finally, I started beating him. And we started talking. I said, Tom, I really got to thank you because you gave me so many tips, but I also want to ask you this. How much do you weigh? His nickname was Tommy Bag of Donuts because he'd bring a bag of donuts, but he'd eat them all. Or if somebody had one, hey, would you like a donut? He'd eat them all. The guy, he said, well, I'd like to say 250. And I said, okay, so you really mean 260. Well, that's 100 pounds more than I weigh. And the car only weighs a little more than 900 pounds. So I've got a basic arithmetic. I've got a 13% advantage to you in terms of the power to weight ratio because I'm a skinny guy and you're not. So at any rate, I finally came to terms with it. And I did let one guy drive the car one time. And this responds to a question that somebody asked me on all the comments. And again, I love the comments. He said, what about Tyrrell, Ken Tyrrell? And Ken Tyrrell was a famous guy because he was kind of an independent guy who created some of the greatest Formula One cars kind of instinctually. Now, they were simpler back in that era. You just bought a Cosworth DFV engine and a Hewland gearbox, and then you built the car around all of the rest of the stuff. So I had a good friend who was actually a supplier for Mesa Boogie for decades, Phil Stratford. His company, Penn Elcon, makes our knobs and a lot of our hardware, a lot of our complicated little fiddly bits that require machining and stampings and so forth and so on. So he had a 1994 Tyrrell Formula One car, which to me, that's a modern car. It has all the telemetry and everything's computer controlled and Jesus, completely the opposite of my low-tech concept. At any rate, we swapped rides. I did not like the Tyrrell. It was super vibrating. I was afraid I was going to blow it up. And I came back and I said, well, I don't even see. I've been warned about the TAC being this series of LEDs on the steering wheel. I never even got it into the yellow. And they said, oh, yeah, right. Well, we forgot to download the data from the last run, and so it doesn't work. We have to do that and reset that. And I said, oh, man, I'm a seat of the pants. I'm an old fat. So how did Phil like driving this car? Remember me talking about the Zone? I said, so Phil, what'd you think? Did you like that car? And he said, like that car? We made love out there, mate. I had no idea that a car like that even existed. I've never experienced anything like that. And I said, so pretty great, huh? I saw you go from the back of the pack. This was a practice session. Through all the Formula Fords, then the B cars, then the Atlantics, then the Formula 2 cars before the time was up on the thing. And he said, yeah, you don't drive this car. It reads your mind. Dude, I will trade you straight across for my 94 Tyrrell Formula 1 car with a spare V10 Judd engine. Straight across. I said, no can do, Phil. Sorry. I love this car. And frankly, I didn't like driving yours, and it's broken almost all of the time because it's so freaking complicated. Yeah, that was the deal. See, he was really experiencing the flow because, again, the car is not the fastest car. But I'm here to tell you that faster is not more fun. It's way more of everything and not necessarily fun. And it's not that much slower. So what happens is as you move up through the ranks of these cars is that everything expands exponentially, the cost, the maintenance, and all of that, and the speed goes up incrementally. Like for 4 times the cost, you can shave off 3 seconds at Sears Point. For 8 times the cost with a Formula 1 car, you can shave off another 3 or 4 seconds. Big whoop. It ain't worth it. I'd rather just go out and have fun. Nobody's paying me. So at any rate, now let's talk about what happened here, how we started our silly little race team, because, man, we had more fun than I thought a human being should be legally allowed to have. Now, Palm Springs has had a glorious past in terms of road racing. In fact, it was one of the very first U.S. venues, and there was Watkins Glen on the East Coast and Palm Springs, the airport and the streets of Palm Springs. This was in the 50s, and guys like Carroll Shelby were driving Maseratis and so forth and so on. You know, Carroll Shelby, he went on to do the Cobra and the Ford GT40s and so forth and so on. So I wanted to go to run this race. I wanted to go down at Palm Springs, so they're going to revive the Grand Prix. Sign me up. So I'm asking a couple of the elder statesmen at Sears Point. I said, so what do you think? And they said, well, hey, man, you're doing really well with that Brabham here. But when you get down there, that group is going to be a whole different kettle of fish there. There's going to be, at the front of the pack, it's going to be full-on pro-level racing. 2 guys to watch out for, John Marconi, Jordan Harris. Each one has track records with certain cars at certain tracks. They will do everything. They will force you off the road. They will try to freak you out. It's a whole different deal. But do remember this, to finish first, you must finish. So my good friend Thomas Burden, that you're going to be hearing so much more about, he's the guy. Let me back up a little bit. I had a problem with the Lotus 7, and I took it to the Tom Rust Racing Shop. At that time, Thomas was the new hire and the low man on the totem pole. And here I am, a low man with a freaking Lotus 7, great car that it is. It ain't no Formula 1 car, and that's what they're working on. So Thomas, take care of this idiot. And so he gets the car all fixed, and later on I come back and meet him, the beginning of this friendship, and he said, dude, I got to tell you, and I hope you don't mind, but I did a test. That car lays rubber in first gear, second gear, and third gear. When you punch it, that freaking thing, that car is a bullet. I had no idea that car was so badass. So at any rate, this is Thomas. We're bonding. We're becoming friends because we're both young and inexperienced and cheap. And so he borrows a flatbed open trailer, and we hook it up to my ranch pickup truck, which is an old beater Ford 150, and we arrived down at Palm Springs, and the first guy we run into was Dave Vager, the 3-time national champion who has the top shop in the Petaluma area, and he brokered this car. This is the back view of that Brabham. And he looks at us and he goes, what's the matter with you guys? Have you guys got stupid pasted on your forehead? You can't show up at an event like this with a car like that. on a trailer and a rig like that. What? I'm embarrassed for you guys. This looks like the most impoverished Mexican gardener's rig that I've ever seen. Don't set up near me in the paddock. I don't want to know you guys. So we're kind of humbled and okay. So well, everybody's trying to learn their way around the streets and get it. And so they're saying, okay, so the qualifying event will not be a race. It will be a timed event where we're going to grid the cars for the Palm Springs Grand Prix based on your best lap time. So literally you could go out and do 2 or 3 laps and come in, and that you don't have to finish. This is not a race. They further said that they will grid everybody for this time trial based on your best practice results. And so we figured, hey, we're pretty quick. We'll be right up there in the front someplace. Well, no, they had a problem with the timing. So at the very last minute, they said, oh, it's going to be first come, first serve. We had a trouble with the timing. Didn't get probably a computer thing. They erased it or something like that. So we're going, holy shit. We show up late. There's 41 cars in front of us. We're 42. We're the last one. We're going, oh man, we'll never get a lap time because a lot of these guys are dead slow, which is okay in vintage racing. You go where you belong. That's fine. But we want to be up near the front someplace. So Thomas is super apologetic. I said, dude, it's not your fault. This is, and I said, by the way, I just got this idea. Thomas, I call him over, I'm with the helmet on and everything. I said, hey, go stand over there and look where you can see when they come around the last turn onto this long front straight. When you first see them, give me a nod. And he said, what, huh? And I said, I don't have time to explain. Just go do it. And so they're waving everybody onto the track. Come on, come on, come on. All of the cars go. And I'm sitting there. I've got the ignition switched off, but the starter motor still works. So I'm going, come on, get on the track. It won't start. The car won't start. And I'm doing this for 3 minutes, 3.5, 4 minutes. And Thomas, he gives me the nod. I turn on, meaning here they come. I turn on the ignition switch, immediately fires. Okay, come on, get on the track. I got a clear track, baby. So I get out there and I remember I got to warm up my tires. I got to warm up my brakes. I can't blow it, but I do have to stay away ahead of the pack because the lead guys, they're raging up on me. So at any rate, that worked out great. And I ended up setting the second fastest lap time. So come the big trophy race, I'm on the front row next to this guy, Jordan Harris. Now, Jordan has a car similar to mine, but it's actually the upgraded Formula 2 version, meaning it's got the Cosworth engine rather than the Lotus twin cam, which I've got, and that puts out about another 40 horsepower or so. And so they throw the green flag and off we go. And I can tell Jordan is like, he's distracted because I'm right on his tailpipe. And he's getting more frantic all of the time. I'm a very smooth driver. If you remember that deal about the dirt track guy, hey, you're smooth, you're too smooth. And so here we are, we made the first lap and we're coming around to this 90-degree hairpin that leads you back onto the front straight. And I'm on the brakes and Jordan is still going. And I'm thinking, oh man, that must be why the guy is so fast. Geez, he goes so deep into the turn before, oh shit, look at that. Smoke pouring out of all 4 wheels. He's blowing it. He locked up the brakes and he missed the turn altogether. So, hey, I'm in the lead. This is cool. And so I do a lap or two and then here comes Jordan again, but he doesn't get anywhere. He goes off and stuffs it into the tire wall and go, okay, he's done. That first you must finish bit, hey, he ain't finishing. But the other guy, John Marconi, he's there, but I'm keeping this, a comfortable distance ahead of him. I'm not really worried about him until midway through the race. We're already deep into lap traffic, and 2 guys have come together up in turn 1, and so the corner workers are waving the yellow flags like crazy, and that means slow down, caution, no passing. So I do the right thing, which is I lift off the throttle and I hold up my hand to indicate that I got the message. Marconi drives right by me. He doesn't slow down or anything. And I'm going, wait a minute, that's blatant cheating. What the F is that about? And they don't black flag him. He did this right in front of the corner workers, and there's a huge spectators. The grandstands are full of people in there. Oh, maybe it's because his father's company is co-sponsoring this event along with Chrysler Corporation. That might have something to do with it. So, any rate, so I'm following him around, and luckily he does exactly what I'm expecting him to do when we get back up to that turn one again. He closes the door on the turn, which means he hogs the whole track so I can't get around, but mainly he hogs the apex of the thing. And I've anticipated this, and I've used this technique at Sears Point many times, so I go way outside to the left because this is a right-hand turn, and I make my turn way out there and start accelerating. So the instant that he moves away from that apex, I shoot under him, and I'm back in the lead again. It was a great clean pass, and it works so often. It's just amazing. But man, old Marconi, he knows how to drive a defensive line and an offensive line too. So he is trying every nasty ass trick to freak me out. And at one point, I remember looking over, and his wheels and my wheels are interlocked. Now these are open wheel cars, and if the tires touch, that means somebody gets launched into the air. It is really bad news. So obviously, I'm going, oh shit. Well, whatever you do, don't freak, don't slow, just drive as predictable as you can and let him deal with his car. I'll just deal with my car. And that worked. But here we were. I mean, that guy had incredible car control, and we're drifting around these turns. It seemed like we were inches apart. We were probably a foot or two apart. Well, that's really close when you're hauling ass in open wheel cars. So we get all the way around. We're on the last lap coming up, and we're at that last turn before the front straight again. And I tried something tricky. I dropped it into first gear. And that's a hard shift to do, and it's a hard shift to go from first to second. These are 5-speed Hewland gearboxes, but the first gear is mainly for driving around in the paddock. You never really use it on the track. But this right angle turn is slow enough. Okay, I'm going to and so that gave me the ability to surge ahead by, a car length or two. And I carried that lead all the way down to the checkered flag and won the thing. And so on the cool down lap, Marconi comes up and he's like, yeah, man, dude, that was hot, man. That was fucking great racing. He had a ball. He didn't care that he came second. That guy'd run so many races. For me, it was pretty important that pretty gratifying that I did come in first, because it was my first big deal race. And by the way, who should wander over? My father. I had no idea he was there. He said, son, you just won. And I said, yeah, can you believe it? I can't. And then Dave Vager wanders over, and he said, hey, Jordan was complaining that he didn't have any brakes. Did you see anything? And I said, have any brakes? Dave, he had them locked up going into that last turn. I saw smoke pouring off all four wheels. And he says, yeah, I'm so sick of that guy whining. Jesus, he just overcooked it. And and by the way, you two guys, he means me and Thomas, he said, I'm really proud of you two. You're not nearly as stupid as you look. And at that point, we decided to name our racing team Team Stupid. And man, I'll tell you, it's really fun to call yourself stupid, because everybody makes these stupid mistakes, and you do it, and you just, well, hey, Team Stupid, what do you expect? We're just living up to our name and our reputation. And man, I'm here to tell you, we had so much fun. I've lost track of how many races, but 300, easily 300 races, and so many victories. It was almost embarrassing. And I owe a lot of it to Thomas Burden, the best race mechanic. He won't do engines, because these engines are a whole different art form. But in terms of the chassis setup, he makes them fast, he makes them reliable. And my growing up with that underpowered Bug-Eye Sprite, I learned how to carry momentum. through turns and skiing. I learned how to feel that limit of adhesion, and I took a lot of advice from guys who know more than I do. And man, I tell you what, I suggest that anybody that's listened this far, remember that. Take advice from people who know more than you do. That's how you learn. Okay, well, that was fun. And I hope you gearhead out here liked it. And if you did, let me know, because, man, there are lots more cool racing stories with great, cool people. And remember, it's the zone, it's the flow, it's the groove, baby. Whether we're talking four wheels or whether we're talking your guitar and the band is hitting that groove, that's what we live for, right? Okay, thanks. See ya.